Liam.
All right. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
Should we
4,
close that
3,
door?
2, 1. It doesn't matter. There's no one here, so I don't know.
All right.
Yeah. All right, bro. Welcome. Welcome, my dude.
What's good?
My boy Rodolfo. You like to go by Rodolfo now, right?
I mean, that's my real name. That's my government name.
Well, but I'm saying Rudy is how I met you, really.
Yeah, only a few people can get Rudy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rodolfo's a little better for newcomers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, you had two stages, right? You before Mexico and after Mexico.
I mean, I did Mexico 2 times. I did 2 tours.
Yeah. I think before you went to Mexico, I feel like maybe this is just me, maybe I'm projecting right now, but I feel like you were stronger on the Rudy before Mexico. And then after Mexico, when you went to Esmeralda.
Yeah.
And then after that is like strictly Rodolfo. Like, don't you dare call me Rudy.
Yeah, Rodolfo's kind of serious. Part of me does kind of miss Rudy.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
I don't know. There's something jovial about it. Something that's kind of sweet, warm.
Yeah.
Rodolfo just kind of seems like kind of icy.
True. You're like, you don't know me, son. You don't know me.
If you mispronounce my name, I'm going to fuck you up. Do not call me Rudolph.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know. But I feel like Rudy's also kind of like it's kind of special in the way that it's kind of like a throwback. I mean, it's definitely a reminder of a lot of things of the past. A past that was a little, I guess, less serious.
Yeah. You're more serious now.
More than ever. I
Yeah.
don't want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that it's something that comes with age because that's kind of whack. I mean, I think it just comes with with a set of experiences that I've had, or I should say, a multitude of experiences.
Really?
Where I've become, I feel like a little less lighthearted, and I'm trying to. I don't know how can I say it, but I'm trying to trace my steps back in many ways.
Mm.
I mean, I think a lot of it also stems from the fact that like I've been super isolated. Yeah, for sure.
Really?
Yeah, I'm super isolated. I mean, obviously, I'm a super conversational individual.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do love to talk to people. I do love strangers.
Yeah.
But in terms of my daily, I mean, I live in Bed-Stuy. My studio's in Bed-Stuy, and my studio is literally like about half a mile away from my apartment.
Yeah.
So I don't really leave that particular pocket.
Yeah.
You know?
What about people though? Because I wouldn't, from an outside looking in, I actually wouldn't say that about you.
Yeah.
Because I've been to like the parties you throw at your house or like, all that stuff. So to me it seems like people gravitate towards you. Obviously including me. Like people gravitate towards you. So it doesn't seem like you're isolated. That's just from an outsider's perspective.
No, I mean I don't think I come off as an individual that's isolated. I don't think that I kind of give off this energy where I would rather not be bothered. I think I'm...
You don't seek it or something?
I think I'm pretty inviting. But yeah, I no longer seek it anymore. And I don't know where that really stems from. I mean, I have some ideas. But yeah, I'm trying to kind of avoid that. I mean, it's kind of hard because it's become a bit habitual. And it definitely kind of begins with like me living in Mexico. Yeah. Despite having a lot of friends, my day-to-day was kind of spent just me alone, me in the studio constantly. I think that's another reason as to why I've been in this kind of battle with trying to make a body of work and also be very consistent with art making.
Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes I kind of find myself kind of deviating from like a visual practice and focusing more on like reading material that's not necessarily um, warm or uplifting, but definitely material that's way more definitely enlightening, but also at the same time kind of defeating. Yeah.
Why defeating though? Do you feel like it's almost like you could never amount to that or something, or what?
No, not so much. And I mean, it's not like it's existential works that I'm like focusing on per se. I mean, um, I just think that because I'm becoming a little bit more involved with Marxist theory in terms of uh, a visual practice, you know what I mean? Particular photography and sculpture. It's become a bit more challenging to make work because of the fact that art can't really, you can't really sustain off art, especially in a city like New York, without trying to market yourself and compromise.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, I don't want to come across as a purist. But in an ideal world, I wouldn't be making work for the sake of selling it so I can sustain.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think in an ideal world, I guess, how would an artist sustain themselves then?
I mean, it would have to be a kind of utopian society, which doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd certainly have to be something that requires some form of bartering, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
like craftsmanship or something.
yeah. I mean,
like I'll trade you this table I made.
Yeah.
A thing.
I mean, too often, I mean, people have this misconception that artists essentially have no skills.
Right.
They know how to paint. They know how to like draw.
That's part of what makes it so desirable, right? Is like, damn, you're living off something that I can do theoretically.
Theoretically,
right? Like, oh, I know how to paint. You know, that's actually something that I come across a lot at this job at work is that the whole view on influencership, right? People get angry at it because it's like, oh, they're just posting photos on Instagram. I can do that, but nobody's paying me for it. So it's like kind of frowned upon automatically. It's like you're doing something that doesn't take any talent, quote unquote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you look a little deeper and they're kind of putting together a magazine in a way. They're putting an editorial like calendar together. They're ideating what they're going to photograph. And, you know, it takes some sort of talent. And if it doesn't take talent, it at least takes drive.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, I don't think it takes, for me personally, I don't think it takes talent, but it does take some form of ambition.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, for me, the whole idea behind influencing is that you're essentially trying to sell goods of others as a storefront would,
or even an idea.
Yeah. And you're advocating for it. But the moment something new comes across, you're essentially jumping ship and hopping onto the next, you know, bandwagon.
Yeah.
I mean, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to knock anyone's hustle.
Yeah.
Do I necessarily agree with it? You know what it is? I don't think it's the influencer that's the issue per se. I think it's more so
the commerce
and the content that they're peddling.
Right.
I feel like oftentimes from most influencers that I've seen, they're all kind of selling the same thing or something very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, influencer is a term that's relatively new, right? I would imagine. I mean,
yeah, the term is new, but I think,
the idea is
right.
not, and that's the thing, because it's such what do you call that? What's it like a catchphrase?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It makes it seem less serious,
right?
I mean, and oftentimes you look at the individuals who are, you know, selling you something, and you know, they're kind of like essentially simpletons.
Right.
I mean, no one's selling me something that I don't know about or have thought about.
Right.
And so for me, I kind of feel like I don't really care for it.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I see you as lesser, but oftentimes I'm like,
Yeah. You know what I actually find kind of interesting about it, the influencer stuff too as well is in my experience, or what I've noticed, is that there's very few influencers who sought out to be an influencer.
mm-hmm.
It was kind of something that just happened to them, you know? Like, for example, I posted pictures of my outfits online and a lot of people liked it. You know? Or it's like I was trying to lose weight, so I posted my weight loss journey, and a lot of people connected to that. You know, it's very rare that someone was like,
the algorithm chose you,
or something like that. It was very rare that anyone was like, I'm gonna go out and like curate my feed and do this thing and gain a following and then monetize it.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think it was methodical? You just thought it just so happens.
Yeah, which I think is why a lot of people desire it, but not a lot of people achieve it. I think. This is just a theory of mine. I don't know. I can't really prove it, obviously, but I think that's kind of the case. Is like people, it just kind of happens to people, and then they have to go with it, or they don't. They can, you can choose not to. Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I you know what I mean. I think that's also the danger, right? Because if it accidentally happens to you, excuse me, there's like, if it accidentally happens to you, then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I'm getting paid for something that I would have done anyway, right? And then you get attached to that feeling, the feeling of getting paid for something. And then all of a sudden, you're trying to do that as much as possible. And I think that's where the abundance of the commerce thing comes from.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, you're a salesperson.
Right.
And you got to provide numbers.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think what's a little more, I mean, what makes me a little, I mean, not interested, but I mean, some questions I have for just that, like, you essentially happen to stumble upon this, or by chance you were given this quote unquote opportunity. And so now you need to essentially make sure that your numbers increase, whether rapidly or at a steady pace. But the moment that you become stagnant, chances are your opportunities will lessen.
No, for sure. Or even your numbers don't even have to become stagnant, but there will be someone else who just grows faster.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's the epitome of a rat race.
Right.
Because now influencers I don't think work collaboratively ever.
Yeah.
Unless there's a duo, like let's say maybe like a DeSeuss and Mero. You know what I mean? And someone finds like, yo, let's have these two dudes do this and this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It just, in many ways, it kind of seems sacrificial in that, like, I feel that like influencers could potentially be burning a lot of bridges and they don't even know it. And so that
burning a lot of bridges, what, even personally? Because that's something that I also think about, right? Is how artistry lives within influencership, right? Because there are some, and whether you consider it art or not is a different debate, I think. But there's artists like C.J. Henry, for example, who built her whole following from Instagram, right? She makes art, and she got famous for making art, which I think that's a different category. Or I think there's maybe subcategories in influencership, which is like you're talented at something, and you get famous from that talent. It could be illustrations, it could be photography. That's a certain level, right? And then you have another level, which is like, I just look good. I'm an attractive person, right? Or I know how to dress really well, or something like that, right? So I think there's two different schools of that. But the question, what I was going to say is keeping that integrity being, option one, the like person who has a talent that got recognized and built a following from the talent. How do you keep that integrity and, move into the world of like pushing product or something, or like, you know what I mean? Because it becomes a question of like sustainability, right? Like, okay, cool, I can have dope photos and, from my photos, I garner a following. But if I don't monetize that following, then that following doesn't mean anything, does it? Mm-hmm. I mean,
that's the reality.
Right.
I mean, yeah, Instagram has become such a powerful platform in how it essentially kind of forces people into a particular like vacuum.
Right.
Algorithms are obviously the backbone of this application.
And not only that one too. Spotify.
Yeah, Spotify, everything. Everything that has to do with computers.
Yeah.
You can even look into criminology. Also affects the police force. They dictate, where crimes are potentially going to happen based on,
historical data or something. Yeah.
Algorithms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I just, what it does is that I think it just limits people's scope.
Yeah.
More than anything else. People think it's broadening horizons.
Yeah. Or like hyper personalization is what people also like about it, right? Like, it's going to show me, things that I like or something,
Yeah,
As if that would be better.
If anything, it just basically reduces
the probability of you learning something.
There's no happy accidents happening. Mm-hmm. The chances of you stumbling upon something is very limited. Oftentimes it just doesn't happen, right? Because too often, a lot of the things that they're showcasing are the same,
right?
So that's super problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also that helps like things that are like really kitschy kind of thrive.
Right.
Certain
common denominator type of stuff.
Yeah. Certain movements that for a fact wouldn't have longevity are still existing because of the fact that they're super marketable.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like a whole other conversation. That's like...
Yeah, we got deep. This is the first 17 minutes.
I don't even know half the shit that I said.
Should you introduce yourself at this point?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, we're 17 minutes in, dude. We got real deep real quick.
I'm Rudy.
Let's tell people about...
There's Rudy and there's Rodolfo.
Your artist. Rodolfo. Yeah, that's what we started on. That's what the starter was.
I'm a Gemini.
Yeah.
So there'll always be some sense of duality.
So there's always a Rudy and a Rodolfo.
There's always a Rudy Rodolfo.
Wow, full circle.
Yeah. There's the drama and there's the comedy, right?
Yeah.
Or the tragedy and the comedy. Yeah. That's my life in a nutshell.
What do you call yourself? Do you call yourself a photographer, designer, a sculptor? What do you call yourself? Just an artist in general? Do you call yourself anything?
Keeping it frank, because of the fact that I haven't been consistent with my art making, I feel less and less of an artist every day.
Really? What do you feel like then?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't feel like there's a loss of identity.
Yeah. You just are.
Yeah, I am who I am, but I've kind of lost touch with things that really meant something to me.
Yeah. But you've always been in the periphery and like you said, you research and like all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
Absolutely. Life happens. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality. Life happens. And I don't want to create any excuses and say that there's a specific formula for art making.
Right.
The reality is that you have to sustain. And some people are really fortunate. Some people are super talented and are very deserving of where they are with their practice. But I think one thing that people kind of overlook is the reality that luck is such a huge factor or a lack of luck is such a huge factor in our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone wants to say that hard work pays off. Hard work absolutely does. I mean, I think people should find something as soon as possible. I mean, some people don't find what they love till later in their lives, and there's a lot of artists out there, artists who are dead and left a mark on history, and artists who are currently walking down the streets from us, you know,
right?
Who haven't been discovered for whatever reason, right, or aren't in the practice of making because of the fact that they're just going through some shit. And right now, I'm kind of living with a bit of confusion because of the fact that, I mean, for a number of years, I was just making work without any particular direction, and I decided to go in the route of the institution, and so I attended school, meaning undergrad, and that took about like 3 years of my life, and through that, I was provided some incredible fucking experiences.
Yeah.
You know, I attended a residency in Connecticut at Yale, and I got a really incredible grant to make work, teach, and exhibit in a museum in Mexico City the year after that. And then I came back to New York, and I feel like I've been kind of stuck since.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't made anything that I can say that I like really fucking worked on and thought about and researched and wrote about since I was living in Mexico. I mean, for the past 3 years, this is going to get a little heavy. I've been 2 to 3 years. I've been just kind of like trying to get out like serious bouts of depression.
Really?
Yeah. And so I now finally feel like I'm getting close to something more meaningful. Yeah. And I think that meaningful is me slowly going back to art making.
Nice. Because that was going to be my first question. Do you think that it almost like perpetuates itself in the fact where, you know, art making isn't a part of your life, thus leading to, you know, like a sense of fulfillment or something that you need, which then cycles back to like not making art. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to say because I don't have, I can't say I have a mentor. Yeah. I mean, I have many mentors in many aspects of my life, but in terms of art making, I no longer have like that professor that I can go to and be just like emotionally vulnerable with. Gotcha. And be like, yo, I'm fucking stuck. Yeah. I'm pretty lost. Yeah. I know who I am as a person. I have an idea. I see a potential in growth because I'm ambitious, but I don't know how to go back to making. Yeah. I have like what the equivalent of a writer's block. Yeah. And it's been like this for 2 years. So yeah, that's been kind of it's been kind of difficult. I mean, I don't want to get too theoretical or existential per se, but I think one of my main conflicts with me personally that I've had discussed with one of my good friends was kind of like being part of this generation. I mean, everyone wants to, you know, title it millennials or generation, what is it, X? Yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know anymore, right? Whatever. I'm 32 years old. Yeah. Figure it out. Yeah. But if you think about it, like, you think back to our teenage years, because you and me are almost the same age. Yeah. If not the same age. Wait, how old are you? I'm 30. You're 30. Yeah. There was a point in our lives where, like, we eventually had access to the internet. Yeah. I mean, the internet has been around almost forever now. But yeah, a couple of decades even before us, but it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't anything as monumental as home. Yeah, it wasn't like a what's that called? Like a home. It wasn't in your home. Yeah. It wasn't a network. Yeah, yeah. Per se, that was offered to the public. Right. Like a limited few had access to it. Right. Or you had to go somewhere to access
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
You know, we were around during, the invention, or not the invention per se, but the commercial, what do you call it?
The commodity.
The commodity and the commercial beginnings
of the
of
personal computer.
Of the personal computer,
Yeah.
the 56K.
Right.
I mean, we were there when AIM
America
was blowing
Online,
up.
Yeah.
And like, you think about AIM, we were how old? Maybe, let's say early teens.
Yeah.
11, 13 years
12,
old.
yeah, something like that.
Then from there, it moved on to like,
All of a sudden, cable.
Live Journal and all
Yeah.
these things where people would personalize their pages.
Yeah.
I mean, you had really limited access, right? You weren't really navigating pages. You were navigating pages, but it was limited to a page per person.
Right.
And then eventually became MySpace. And then from that became Facebook, which was, gave people limited access. You had to be in college to have access to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? You needed like a college email to have access to it. And then eventually it was open to like the full public. And then eventually you have like Instagram, which came a little later in our lives when we were in our 20s. And so, and you had Tumblr being first. And so, I mean, it's really interesting because like, prior to Tumblr, there wasn't really a way to kind of showcase your work and have a massive audience.
Right.
Unless you had a web page. And then if you had a web page, if you really wanted to know you had an audience, you either had to receive emails
Right.
from these people, or you had to know like analytics. And so what's really challenging is that at one point we were making work with the desire to make work because we enjoyed it, and then having the possibility of maybe having more people see it that weren't in our physical space.
Right.
And so if you kind of got like, a good reception or even bad, like, you know what I mean? Where people were just being really critical, whether it be, super positive or negative, like that was something really rare that ever occurred. And so it's kind of conflicting because for our generation, or at least for me personally, it was just like, I was making work for the sake of making work because I actually loved it and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about like
Notoriety.
the potential, the possibility of becoming what you could say is an influencer.
Right.
Right? Or someone that was considered famous for such and such things. So, and then you have Instagram, which was solely dedicated for photographers in many ways. And, you had followers, but the very beginning phases of it, like people were barely touching like 1,000 people.
Right.
This was an app that wasn't really, it wasn't really popping off like that.
Yeah, it was living on the peripheries of things like
Yeah.
Tumblr.
Of Tumblr, yeah.
Everyone had a
everyone
huge following
everyone
on
had
Tumblr,
on Tumblr. Everyone had,
but not that many people were on
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah.
and the problem with Tumblr was that it was super limited, in that like, yeah, you had that notoriety, but it wasn't it wasn't as accessible as Instagram would become because of the fact that they never really adapted an application for the cell phone to make it as intuitive and as easily accessible as Instagram.
Yeah.
And then you have Instagram.
Yeah.
And then because of the fact that photography has been accessible since, I wouldn't say its inception, but since many, many decades ago, and now even more so with, cell phone camera technology.
Well, that's an interesting thing because I thought about that. I thought about that a little bit, and I think photography, obviously, and maybe this is the case for a lot of things, which is like, the inception of photography was like a very specialized tool that replicated reality, let's say, right? Like, oh, this thing could freeze a moment in time without the need of a painter, which you could imagine that was revolutionary. The only way you could get a portrait of yourself before that was for someone to paint it, Now the camera comes out. That's obviously considered probably like an high art object. And as we commodify the camera, so we also commodify photography, right? So then it gets to the point where, yes, sure, the portrait itself could still be considered a piece of an art form, But then and then it trickles down to like your family has a camera and you take vacation photos, you know. So then the commodification of photography, you know, unfortunately, I guess maybe this is, I'm no authority on it, but it could diminish the art of what photography is. Granted, you can still be an art photographer, right? And thus that trickle down effect has made its way and you know has obviously made its way to where we are now, where you could probably argue that there's more photos out there that are not art versus that are, you know, and whether they are art or not is, I guess, a debate in and of itself. But we've gotten to the point where now photography is almost, it's a communication tool more than it is a piece of fine art. You know, like I can send you a meme, let's say, a meme. It communicates an idea like really cohesively, and most of the time it lacks words. So, you know, the iconography of a photography has almost replaced language in a way where it's like, I don't have to even type a sentence to communicate with you. I can just send you a photo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which could possibly diminish the art of it, sure, or make it harder to find, I guess, is really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I think in many ways, it's kind of going back to basics, where I kind of feel that in many ways, a lot of the photographers that I've admired in the past, some that I still do, and then some newcomers are in many ways not necessarily deviating from Instagram, but have kind of limited their interaction with it.
Yeah.
Some people still have pages. Some people don't contribute.
Well, you took some time off of Instagram. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It was the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah. Well, where did that decision come from in the first place? Because I mean, I know already, but obviously,
I mean, it comes from a bit of advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who gave you the advice?
Which is the theme of this podcast. That's a good question. I don't remember who gave me this bit of advice. And I can't remember where it actually happened. It could have been in passing. It could have been a direct conversation. But it was just a phrase that this person used, who I can't remember at the moment, but I can definitely say, hopefully, mention who they are afterwards. But silence is the absence of noise. Social media is honestly just noise.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't think anyone is saying anything that we haven't heard.
Right.
I think discovering information that can potentially move us, enlighten us, is only accessible through some really intense research.
Yeah, interesting.
Social media only provides us with tidbits of things. I don't think social media provides solutions. I don't think social media provides an actual reality. Yeah. I feel social media is smoke and mirrors. I mean, I think...
What about awareness, though? Because I think social media does a good job. Not necessarily action, per se.
Not action.
But maybe awareness. You know, I guess.
Yeah, I think in many ways it can.
But maybe it's too much awareness.
It is absolutely too much awareness.
You know, where like, okay, cool, I'm aware of a thing that happened, and before I even get a chance to do an action on it, let's say, like a current example could be like the Australian fires or something.
I mean, I think this is where influencers become problematic, because oftentimes I feel like, for instance, particular movements that are kind of kept afloat through social media, because sometimes they have good messages, sometimes they don't. I mean, yeah. Where was I getting to?
Well, I was saying that, like, you know, let's say something like a current event, like the Australian
the fires.
Well, so like, through social media, you can make a huge amount of people aware of that, right? If you're really good, you can inspire action, right? But at the same time, there's someone else trying to make you aware of their issue and inspire action.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's probably 3 other people and 4 other people, and the overabundance of that really is really an overabundance of awareness. And because of our attention spans, it doesn't necessarily drive action.
I mean, it's hard to say like whether or not we're lacking an attention span per se. I think more often than not, we're just confused. And so because we're confused and we feel lost, we're having a tough time creating like a plan or a mapping to essentially navigate towards a specific place. You know what I mean? In this case, making us aware of a particular situation, a particular problem, and things like that, of that nature. I've been starting my mornings reading the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that that's something that comes with age because that sounds mad whack and cliche.
Yeah.
But there's definitely something pretty incredible about it. I mean, it's a multitude of things, actually. I mean, it's being able to focus because you don't have a bright LED screen in your face.
Right. Notifications.
But it's also in many ways having to stick to one text and not deviate.
Right.
I mean, in many ways, kind of the way notifications kind of fuck with us when we're trying to read something on a cell phone.
Exactly. The long form reading.
But because the fact that text is so much smaller on a newspaper, I mean, you have no choice but to focus.
Right.
There's something about also holding it in your hands. You know what I mean? I mean, it's the same thing with photography and why I've kind of abandoned Instagram.
Yeah. Is
because of the fact that I don't have an interest in a world that's full of screens.
Yeah.
It's not anything that's ever struck my fancy, to be honest with you. I mean, even watching sci-fis as a kid, like I never really felt that like, screens were a cool thing. I was like, oh, I'd rather deal with buttons. I mean, ever since we're kids, you know what I mean? We've always had that interest of, what does a button do? Every action has a reaction.
Yeah. You
know what I mean? But with a screen, it's so much different because there's no sense of feeling other than that piece of like
the glass.
Of glass.
Right.
So silence is the absence of noise. Yeah, social media is noise.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are noise. But I think that...
So you were away from Instagram for how long? Do you know?
About a year or less than a year. And I've gone kind of back to social media, but I find myself...
Not interested or something?
Disconnecting. I mean, there's this idea that I need to, like, connect with my audience.
Yeah.
And...
That's I think, the hardest part,
I don't... There's nothing real about DMs.
Yeah.
I mean, because the reality is that if DMs are that important to you, you would just share your phone number with someone and you would just have an immediate conversation via text.
Yeah.
Or you'd be pen pals and you'd be sending fucking letters that actually require a lot of thought and a lot of proofreading. There's this belief that accessibility in high numbers is actually a good thing. I don't think that's always the case.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to needs, accessibility is something really important.
Yeah.
I mean, we see what's happening in Flint with Flint and Newark, with their situation with water and lead. You know what I mean? And things like that where people don't have accessibility to fucking things that
normal,
that are, provided through this planet, So I don't always think that accessibility is a good thing.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, if you really think about it, humans aren't really designed to live in this big of a community.
Absolutely not.
Mentally.
Mentally, no.
You know what I mean? I would probably say we're, evolutionarily speaking, we're meant to really only live in like 50 to 60 people max. But because of internet, we're connected to hundreds, maybe thousands. You know? I don't say more than thousands because I think that you have a mental capacity, but beyond that, it's an abstract number that it doesn't even matter beyond 1,000 because you can't even think of 1,000 people. You know what I mean? So that's why I stop it at 1,000 because I don't think it's like, oh, even if I had 100,000 followers, that doesn't mean I'm connecting with 100,000 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you are as an entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's 100,000 people watching you, but as the entertainer, you're not saying like, I know all 100,000 people who are watching me or observing, whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, I think another question I guess I want to ask is like, you know, the mental health of that, right? Of being aware of so many people. Do you think that affects your art making?
I mean,
was that part of your decision to leave Instagram?
That's part.
Is the fact that so many people
is me leaving Instagram a reason? No, wait. How can we rephrase this then? So,
like, do you think that you had let's say like, all right, you publish a photo on Instagram and the possibility of publishing that photo is attached to however many people you imagined viewing that photo, right? So like, not only am I posting a photo for people to see, in my head I'm like, damn, millions of people can see this. Does that block you from posting it because so many people can?
No, it's not. It's not so much that, and I don't want to say that. I also think my work is too good for it either,
right?
Because I don't feel confident in the work that I've made in the past. I don't think I'll ever feel confident. I mean, people say that I come across as super confident. I mean, it could be for a number of reasons. My stature being one of them. I don't know. That's definitely one of the things. My furrowed brow that I constantly have. I mean, I don't know.
The glasses.
The glasses,
the
yeah.
beard.
The beard, you know what I mean? Just like standing out, you know what I mean? Because of the fact of, you know, whether it's the way I dress, my stature, all these things that I've mentioned. No, I just think the reason why I've kind of like stepped away from it and decided that I don't want to use it as a platform to showcase my work is because of the fact that at the end of the day, people don't use Instagram to actually feel inspired or feel motivated. The reality is that there's so much going on that we're forgetting about all the actual incredible work that's on Instagram. It's like
we're too concerned with the platform itself rather than the content of the
or
platform.
the fact that we just never have enough. Yeah. I mean, you see it all the time when like on the train when people are scrolling down and like whether it be the algorithm or the speed of their service of their cell phone provider, like they keep scrolling the screen down in hopes that it would reload fast enough.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah,
like people don't
like they want
people
the
don't
newer.
Yeah, like we can say that we communicate through photo, but I don't think that because photo has become so commercialized, monetized, such a big form of communication, I don't think it's made people more visually literate than before the existence of Instagram. I don't think so at all. I don't think people.
What do you mean by visually literate?
I don't think people can break down a photograph the way that they can also, depending on who they are, break down text.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I don't think people are trying to find meaning in certain things. Like, for instance, like, I don't know, visual literate, meaning that, like, how does a historian look at a painting?
Right.
Like, if you're in an art history class, your professor can tell you so many things that you never thought about because of the fact that they've studied this. They're professionals. They're masters. You know what I mean? They put in their 10,000 hours of work.
Right.
And so, because of the fact that they've been studying imagery for so long, there's not necessarily a formula of how to study each image, but there's traces of the past. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what we do. We think of past experiences to try to understand things.
The context.
Whether it's an experience that we've personally felt or it's an experience that we've had because we've researched things, we learned about certain things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't think that since the inception of Instagram that it's made people visually more literate. All it really provides us is with trends. And I see a lot of photographers that are creating bodies of work that have portfolios that are quote unquote diversified, meaning that there's people of color and everyone is using, or a multitude of people are using a particular aesthetic that you can't differentiate. And it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
All these fucking people make the same goddamn work.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, yo, let's get Shorty that chills in the bodega, or let's get the dude that looks like he chills on the block, but now let's put him or her in a particular set of clothes that we know they can't afford to make them look a little different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like everyone is following that formula.
Yeah.
And no one is creating a body of work that says, this is who I am. Like, this is what I have an interest in. People are just essentially following a formula that they know could potentially garnish some success, whether it be quick success. I mean, most of the time it's just quick success. We don't know what the outcome of Instagram is, but the reality is that Instagram and social media flushes out people quicker than we can imagine.
Right.
Because of the fact that now you're an influencer, no matter what you do, and you gotta fucking provide content.
Yeah. That's true.
You got to keep pedaling, and it's got to be better than the last piece. I mean, the reality is that art takes time, and people don't have patience anymore.
Yeah,
and that
was a kind of touching upon the next question, which is the probability of showing process, and maybe everybody's like urge of wanting to see that now.
I think it's bullshit.
Yeah,
I mean, people have an issue with romanticizing, right, things. But the reality is that artists for a long time were always seen as spectacles. Right? People always had this idea of like possibly being voyeuristic and like seeing the artist from a distance through their window.
Because they have magical powers.
Because they have, yes.
Yeah.
They have this, exactly. They have magical powers, right?
Yeah.
And now everyone knows what everyone's doing. Essentially what it looks like oftentimes is that people are just creating another YouTube video of how to make the next meal.
Right.
And I think it's super problematic. I've never been down with it.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue I have with photographers/videographers is, excuse me, the biggest issue I have with them is the amount of videos that I see reviewing camera gear.
Yeah.
Like, this is the best backpack. This is the best lens. This is like, I consistently question why these videographers and photographers are making that kind of video
when they could be making art.
Exactly.
I mean, it's kind of hard to be talking into this microphone, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I kind of I didn't want to come today.
Yeah.
Because I obviously I wasn't prepared. I mean, can you ever be prepared? I mean, the reality is you can, right? There's people that do this shit for a living and they're like, this ain't shit.
Sure.
I'm not. I'm gonna
or have teams or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna add some flavor to the last shit that I said,
Right.
so it sounds brand new.
Right.
Right. But yeah, no, absolutely, that's totally true. Yeah, I don't know why people are doing that. I mean, yeah, showing the process is just it's making. I mean, I feel like artistry is losing its luster.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that artists are providing so much information. And don't get me wrong, I think.
Well, that's part of the commodity of it, I guess, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes people.
It's like the commodification of art.
It fortifies that idea of people looking at paintings and saying, "Yo, I can do that."
Right.
Right. Like you see this body working, like, really, I can do that.
Yeah.
Now that we have access to artists and we actually feel like we know them,
right,
because they reveal so much, we think sometimes that we can do the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it all the time. Who am I to judge the artist, some artists, and say like it's good or bad?
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is everything can be better.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the desire of like ambition. You know,
yeah,
working towards something.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, what if someone does say like, "Hey, I can do that," and does it? Is that not better?
I mean, time will tell. But
right.
I think at that point people are gonna be like, I don't want to reveal what my secrets are. I don't want to reveal my sauce. Like, I'm not gonna tell you how this shit happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, the thing with secrecy is that secrecy is fucking exciting. And now none of that exists. You know? Like people have an interest in the not knowing. And because now that everyone feels like they know everything, they're realizing more and more that they know nothing at all.
Right.
And it's like really hard to say, because now you're at a place where you have to question, well, how the fuck do I not know anything despite being given all these fucking tools and all this information?
Yeah.
And that is
a little existential.
Really existential. I didn't want to go down that route.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's one of the biggest problems, and it stems from all of that.
Yeah.
You know? We can't have the answers to everything. We shouldn't have the answers to everything. I mean, there's a reason why people have professions. There's a reason why people are masters.
Right.
And masters of none is what most of us are. And more of us are becoming, because of the fact that we can't focus on a particular thing. Because of the fact that we now have access to just everything.
Right.
And it's just like, it's just like the bio of the person that's the entrepreneur, that's the maker, that's the artist, that's the comedian, the writer, the blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, as much as a good thing can be to be a jack of all trades, at the end of the day, you got to have that one thing.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah.
What is it that you do better than everyone else? What is it that you can do that challenges you, that makes you want to continue to work harder? Right? And so for me personally, that's part of the reason why I did leave social media, because of the fact that I knew that it was going to happen to me. And even with the little access that I had to it, it had a profound impact on me, and not for the better. And so that's why I feel myself just distancing myself. I mean, there's those who can be like, yo, dude, you don't have to fucking focus on it so much. You don't have to think about it that much. It's just right. This. I mean, the reality is I'm not that person.
Yeah.
As much as I try and as much as I want to say I'm not that person, I'm not.
Yeah.
You know?
Not that person to not focus on it, or not that person
Yeah,
to...
like I easily give in to shit.
Gotcha.
And it bothers me. Gotcha. That's the reality. I mean, I don't fear the consequences of me saying that. Like, I mean, that's just who I am personally. I'm super vulnerable all the time.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. I mean, but that's also part of my personality. I also think that that's why people feel comfortable around me.
Would you say you were vulnerable on Instagram when you were on it?
I was vulnerable in ways that it did influence me not influenced me. That's not to say it affected me. Yes, in a negative, in a multitude of ways, negatively for sure.
Being
being various things, whether it be followers, whether it be likes.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is that because I left it, and I had kind of like this outsider perspective of this experiences that I've endured, like being on it, being within that like environment. Yeah, I realized that it definitely affected me, and I was just like, yeah. Like I said before, like I wasn't making work because I desired to make work.
Right.
Like I did when it was like what I was saying with Tumblr days, where you were just making work and like, oh, maybe someone will see it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think
that was exciting.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about Tumblr, that was super unique, was the follower count, which was only knowledgeable to you.
Yeah.
You knew how many followers you have, but no one else. It didn't display it on your profile.
Yeah.
It was nowhere to be seen.
But not only that, but because of the fact that it wasn't on a cell phone screen, like you did have
It took a minute to publish onto it.
Yeah. You had to actually to study it and decide, you know what? Am I gonna repost this? Or am I actually gonna take the time to like write that I like this to someone? Because it was viewed differently. Like when someone had something positive to say, they had to message you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or when someone like, you know, put like reposted it, they had to like, oftentimes they didn't repost for the sake of reposting. Like it had to fit a specific theme. You know what I mean? And that there was criticality in that. They were just like, yo, this doesn't fit with this. And it doesn't fit with this because now I'm studying it. You know what I'm saying?
You're saying that the desktop experience or whatever, the laptop, whatever experience.
Yeah. Was significantly different to the cell phone. I mean, there's interesting paintings and photographs that exist that are on a much smaller scale that force you to look in.
Right.
But it's never comfortable to oneself. Like it's not good for your posture. It kind of hurts after a while. But the reality is that it creates kind of almost like a voyeuristic approach, which always interests us. Because of the fact that we have to zero in on something so small and really try to study it and then kind of in many ways kind of enlarge it mentally and like think about it.
Yeah.
Where it's just like with the cell phone experience now, it's just because there's so much going on, you don't have that. You know what I mean? It's not like it's a cell phone chilling on a wall with one image.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure some fucking cheesy artist at some point has used that as part of their concept for work, because I mean, why not? Not trying to throw shade, but I know for a fact someone thought that was a brilliant idea and they probably did that.
I'm sure, yeah, for sure.
You know, nothing is original, nothing is sacred. But yeah. But I mean, going back to like saying,
the portability, right?
Yeah, the portability. But going back to like that advice of like silence is the absence of noise. I mean, there's this thing right now where it's just like, it's good to be a reactionary individual. Like there's clout in being reactionary.
What do you mean?
There's clout in like having an opinion, right? Because that's what social media does.
Yeah.
It provides you with
a
platform that makes you feel some type of way, and it affords you the opportunity to say something. And it goes one of two ways. It either gets many likes, which makes one's ego inflate a bit, or
do more of that.
Or it makes someone aggressive. And neither of those things are good.
Yeah.
And so going back to silence is the absence of noise. I mean, there's resilience in silence. Silence is oftentimes seen as like lacking power.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
But the reality is that it actually requires a lot of control to do.
Yeah.
Do I think people need to be silent more often about a lot of things? about personal things that have happened to them. No, I think it's important to have a conversation for sure. Do I think social media is the place to do it? Absolutely not. I don't think it's the place to do it because of the fact that it will be talked about in the moment, it'll be questioned in the moment, and it'll be forgotten tomorrow. I think that people need to be vocal in a more physical setting. People need to invite conversation, incite it. I think that's, at the end of the day, is the most important way of neither being silent but also not contributing to noise, right?
Gotcha.
But silence also
That makes sense because the noise is I mean it's abundant.
It's deafening is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's also a reason as to why we're confused and conflicted, because of the fact that under noise you can't think straight. You can't go about things in a particular fashion. You can't assess a plan. So it's super problematic. But also with silence is that, I mean, silence is practiced by certain people of certain religions. I mean, the one that comes up to head obviously would be monks, right?
Right.
But leaving religion outside of the picture, I mean, silence in general requires you to be comfortable with your thoughts.
Right.
It requires you to study your thoughts.
Right.
To really, you know what I mean, reflect. I mean, that's what comes with silence. And oftentimes people don't want to reflect because of the fact that they fear certain answers, or they fear their past, or they just fear the fact that they're going to just create a rabbit hole that they may not be able to get out of. And I say this simply because of the fact that I did deal with a silence that stems mostly from isolation that really affected me in a super negative way. And so because I distanced myself from all these things, I'm slowly able to kind of combat that fear, that depression that kind of stemmed from my isolation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Little by little, I kind of feel like I'm coming back. I mean, it feels like a while, and I think the reason why it mostly feels like it's been a while since I made work, is because I'm also at a certain age in my life where when I hear from elders, like, time is ticking.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's the worst thing you can tell someone.
Yeah.
People think of it as a form of advice.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yo, the reality is that tomorrow's not promised. I totally get that. But at the end of the day, and this is another form of advice, is that health is wealth. And some artists are able to create bodies of work while dealing with insane amounts of depression, and I commend them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that as saddening as their experiences are, the situations that they're going through are, the fact that they're able to create a body of work, whether that work be good or not, but the fact that they're able to do is something super, super admirable. But I don't know if I'm that person just yet. I mean, this is the first time in my life where I've kind of dealt with a form of loneliness that I never dealt with before.
Yeah.
And I don't know that at some point in the future, I'll probably deal with it again. Most likely I will. Maybe then I'll be able to
take what you learned.
Take what I learned from this particular experience for sure. But yeah, working on my health has definitely been the most important thing for me in this current state of my life. And when I say health, I mean, I could talk about like my mental physical health,
yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's my mental health. And my physical health in many ways have definitely contributed to my lack of mental stability. I mean, I've kind of dealt with obesity most of my life. And it isn't until very recently that I feel very comfortable in my skin. And I also can tell myself, like, man, I'm kind of handsome. Like, I'm not an eyesore. Like, I feel good, you know?
Yeah.
But just physically feeling also like, man, I can get up out of bed today. Like, I mean, there wasn't ever a point in my life where I was like, man, I'm hurting so much I can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
Because I could only imagine how that would affect me mentally. I mean, but I feel like in many ways I have the foresight because of the fact that I know if I continued to live a lifestyle that was detrimental to my health, physical health, that mentally, my mental health will be the worst it will ever be in the very near future. Physically, I feel good. Mentally, it's kind of a shit show. There are days where I feel fucking marvelous, and then there are days where I just feel
like you don't want to do shit.
Yeah. Unmotivated, questioning existence, questioning everything, but not even in a very constructive way.
Do you think getting off of Instagram helped with recovering from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is also too is that being away from it and just reading and doing lots of research also made me hypercritical
of
a lot of things. Just interpretation, whether it be art, whether it be design, whether it be a form of journalism. I mean, lots of things, films, anything you could possibly imagine. It just made me hypercritical.
Really?
Yeah. I can't say for better or for worse, because, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, being critical is super important, right? I mean, obviously you want to be constructive. You don't just want to be a negative Nancy. So, I mean, being super critical has, in many instances, kind of limited me in my art practice as well.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Because I become hypercritical, I don't let shit rock.
Yeah. Marinate. You don't let it marinate.
I don't let shit marinate. Anything.
Yeah.
And that's where being critical has outweighed having patience. It's really wild.
In your life, or you're saying in general?
In my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I think patience is something that we hear people say that we need to have.
Right.
It is actually the best advice anyone could give, honestly. I mean, it's a lot, but patience is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, people go years of trying to practice that shit, and they never fucking figure it out.
Right.
I mean,
it's an ongoing struggle for most people.
It is. I mean, you think about people who have an impulsive personality. Yeah. There's zero patience in them.
Right.
And I battle with patience all the time.
Yeah. What areas of your life do you battle with patience the most?
My art.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Like, I mean, you want to be able to create more, or what?
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to say because, I mean, no lie, I think I really miss photography.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that I miss the throwback of photography. I miss photography as my own practice. I miss making photography, and I miss photography in its most primitive form. I miss printing.
Yeah. Like darker printing.
I miss all the process, because that process required me to be as patient as ever. I had to go, you start with, you're developing a film, which goes through
However many
development,
chemicals. Yeah.
fixers, stop bath, water, etc., etc.
Right.
Then going to printing the contact sheet, then deciding what you're going to print, and then you can't even say perfecting the print, because perfecting for print is like hard to say. Like, there's photographers, and then at one point there were master printers.
Right.
I mean,
You could argue that there's still that, but
they
obviously
are.
few.
They're limited,
Yeah.
but they're out there.
Yeah.
And I don't.
I mean, that's hard to find because everybody wants to be a photographer nowadays. No one wants to be like the master printer.
Yeah. And I really do miss that process a lot. I mean, that was, if anything, that was the one moment of my life where I was unbothered by everything, because I was in my zone. I mean, I had a cell phone for music. The only thing I was focusing on was just making these fucking beautiful prints of these photos that I felt were kind of decent.
No, I love your photography, dude.
Thanks, man. But yeah, I do. I miss that a lot. I mean, and anyone can just be like, well, fuck, why don't you just go back to it? I mean, now comes in that criticality, that hypercriticism, where it's just like,
You think being on Instagram or off of it makes you more or less hypercritical, even about your own work?
I mean, the reality is that I'm getting older.
Yeah.
And I'm just really scared of my future.
As an artist or in general?
Just in general. I mean, I kind of, you look at my my past, you know what I mean, coming from the background that I have, being that of, lower class, not very much above the poverty line. It's kind of scary. I don't want to deal with that shit ever again.
Right.
I don't want to have to struggle the way my parents struggled.
Right.
And because of that, I have this conflict now where at the very moment, not following my passion because I'm too concerned with what it is I need to learn that will provide me with a better future. I mean, the reality is that if I stay focused and I continue to make work, the probability of me having better mental health would be significant for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if that can promise me better physical health, because of the fact that there's always the possibility that my resources would be limited because of the fact that I'm choosing art over my health. Like, there's certain things that I need the older I get. And so, yeah, I'm constantly in this battle with, like, fuck security.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think about that pretty consistently, where I would like to have a certain level of freedom that I can't have, right?
And I think that's the goal.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Right.
Is that everyone or generations before us worked and strived for security.
And sacrificed the freedom.
And our generation witnessed those before us do it.
Right.
And realized how unmotivated and how sad and depressed they are. Yeah. And so now...
Or we would be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not so much, because that's hard to say, because I think that maybe the generation before us was willing to make that sacrifice and were content with making that sacrifice. Like, I talked to my parents. My dad was actually on the podcast. So I talked to my parents, and he you know, my dad grew up wanting to be like a musician, you know, and there came a point in his life where he was like, I can't do that anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Thus coming to the US and working, which I think that is him giving up his freedom, really, you know? The freedom of being able to make music.
Yeah.
For financial security. I'm not saying it's a wrong choice. I'm just saying, I mean, in terms of like in terms of your desires as an individual human, I have the desire to make music. I can no longer fulfill that desire because there's a necessity now, which is, you know, making money, living, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to our generation. I think that our generation is a little maybe less or not complacent or something, you know, like we, you know, and I think this ties together with the whole advent of the internet, and we see this like possibility of being notarized for something that we can kind of start as a hobby, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where we can say, you know, and granted, a lot of this is on the backs of the sacrifice that the generation before us did, you know. Granted, not everyone, but a lot of people, right? The only reason that you had the internet was because your parents busted their ass to get it.
Yeah.
Right? Same for me. The only reason I even had a personal computer and an internet was because my parents sacrificed their freedom for financial security. You know, because if my parents would have been like, no, you know, my dad would have been like, no, I'm going to make music to the fucking day I die. I don't care about my finances or anything. He would have probably still been in Dominican Republic making music at a beach or something. Who knows? You know what I mean? It just would have been that. That just would have been his life, you know?
Yeah.
Versus taking a chance or whatever. You know, there was something in his decision making led him to this. So anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that, you know, we see, I mean, I only kind of take this from experience, which is like, I see them and I'm like, oh shit, they had a dream before this, you know? And part of it is very egotistical, right? A huge part of it is like, well, if I can't live a life filled with what I love, then why live it, right?
Yeah.
It's very egotistical. Maybe not so egotistical, but like, yeah, it's like, I want to do things the way I want to do it, you know? But part of it is, you know, I'm not trying to paint myself as like some saint or anything, but part of it is like, what did my parents sacrifice their freedom for is for me to have that freedom. So for me, you know, granted, however much my parents may have wanted me to be some kind of professional that I maybe will never be, I really chose to, or am trying to choose still, you know, maybe this is a lifelong struggle, which is the choice to maybe make the art that I want to make and try to live off of it.
Yeah.
Because if not, then what the fuck was it all for?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What the fuck was it all for then? I mean, I guess you can maybe postpone it, meaning that like I can eat shit and sacrifice my freedom. But the only reason why I would do that is for my children to have that freedom.
Yeah.
The freedom to do whatever they want to do without having to, you know, it's just to give them that buffer. It's like, you can try whatever you want to try up until I can financially sustain you. After that, you're on your own. And if you didn't accomplish what you wanted to accomplish by then sucks. You're going to have to pull your pants up and go out and wash dishes or whatever the fuck you got to do to survive. because I wasn't able to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like generational sacrifices or something. I don't even know what that is called, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just my thought about it. I'm gonna try to do this until I can't.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's the thing. I thought I was giving up because there's been such a long pause.
yeah.
I mean,
But I think it goes back to the fact that, you know, where you were having in the beginning of the episode, you were having trouble defining yourself, right? Like, are you an artist or you're not?
yeah.
You just are, right? But I think that also part of it is like you're not anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm coming to now as I'm feeling a little better
Right.
about myself. I'm not anything but an artist.
Exactly.
And shit.
There it is.
Let's drop these mics.
Boom. Episode done. It's a wrap. No, but honestly, that's a good place to end. We're at an hour 20, bro.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are. An hour 20.
Shit. All right.
Yo, thanks for coming on, my dude.
Damn.
This is a great combo.
Fuck you, Brian.
Fuck you,
You
man.
always fucking me up, dog.
Oh, man. Advice you didn't ask for. There it is.
That's exactly what it is. This motherfucker. Sad boy no more, yo.
Yeah,
I'm no longer Rodolfo, I'm Rudy. Holla at your boy.
Holla at me. Tell him your socials. Find me on Instagram.
Yo, you can find me on No String and Clifton off the G Stop, yo.
There it is.
Yo, honestly, I'm chilling at the bodega a lot of the times. I got a dude named Mustafa who's there, who's teaching me French.
What? French is
teaching
the
me-
language, bro.
Yeah.
That's a good language to know.
And Arabic, because he's from Morocco.
Yo, I was just in Marrakesh, bro.
I know.
Yo, that's all they speak out there. Arabic and French.
He's a beautiful man, yo. He lightens up my day. He's the one person on my block where I'm like, I hope I see Mustafa.
That's dope.
So that's where you can find me. You can find me on Nostrand in Clifton trying to find Mustafa for a lesson.
That's that, baby.
That's that. Do or die. Holla at your boy.
Peace.
Peace.